Some of the most bought FPL players going into Game Week 2 actually should be avoided by managers, and we're going to touch on exactly those players in today's video alongside the players that you should be buying for your Game Week 2 team. So as always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure you do drop a like, aim at the 300, and of course, make sure you do smash that subscribe button for daily fantasy content, aiming for 17k before that Game Week 2 deadline. So enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So kicking things off with a player that I think FPL managers need to avoid is going to be Pedro Porro at 5.5 million, coming off the back of that fantastic performance in Game Week 1 last night against Leicester. Leicester looked woeful at times, it's worth noting. But Pedro Porro with that 9-pointer goal, we've seen a lot of that in pre-season. It came to fruition in Game Week 1. And he looked like a brilliant option for managers that went early on him, and rightly so. With opening games against Leicester, followed by Everton in Game Week 2, the opportunity was always there, and thankfully for managers, he capitalised in the opening game week. However, over 50,000 transfers in for Pedro Porro coming into Game Week 2, and I personally do not think managers should be getting on board with Pedro Porro. So firstly, what are the good things about Pedro Porro? Well, a goal in Game Week 1, as we mentioned, popping up in the box as we've seen him in pre-season, but also those long-range efforts that we're accustomed to. So we've got the whole package here with Pedro Porro in terms of goal-scoring opportunities. And 4 attempted assists as well. So not only is he offering a bit of goal threat, he's also a creative force in this Spurs team. And end of the day, at 5.5 million over the course of the season, this is going to be ridiculously good FPL value. But we're not looking at the whole season, we're looking at Game Week 2. And of course, Game Week 2 in isolation is a brilliant fixture at home against Everton. Everton looked woeful in Game Week 1. I fancy Spurs against most teams at home. And Spurs, for the most part, against Leicester did actually look decent. It was just at spells in that second half where they did slightly drop the ball. But I expect a comfortable victory against Everton, and rightly so. If Pedro Porro plays, then you expect a decent return once again. The big problem is he actually going to play? For those managers who don't know, around the 90th minute mark, he went off injured, got replaced. And it does beg the question, how bad is the injury going into Game Week 2? So if you're watching this right now on a Tuesday, do not even think about buying Pedro Porro until we get the press conferences on Friday. Hopefully Ange, and he usually does, gives us an honest update. If he comes out and says that Pedro Porro is fine, then yes, your 1 game week punt looks fine. But let's be real, I think this is more of a 1 game week punt if you're looking to buy him in Game Week 2, because the fixtures long term are just not great. Obviously, Game Week 2 is great. 3 away against Newcastle, 4 at home against Arsenal. Yes, Game Week 5 might look okay on paper, but 6 and 7 also away from home is not ideal at all. So while I think Pedro Porro is a great option, I think we've missed the boat. Game Week 1 was there for the taking. Game Week 2, if you own him, fantastic. But I would say a lot of managers actually are probably looking to sell Pedro Porro coming into Game Week 3 rather than even thinking about holding him long term. And that's why it begs the question, is it really worth buying someone like Pedro Porro coming into Game Week 2? And I think the answer is no. I also need to suggest, like, the Spurs defence is not watertight at all. Now, 0.71 expected goals conceded against Leicester. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible either. But we've seen this from Spurs historically last season, where Ange's setup defensively just isn't the best. Leicester cut through them at times, and this is Leicester. This is going to happen a lot against Newcastle, against Arsenal, if Ange doesn't sort this system out. And to be honest with you, most of the players were available to him. So I think this is more of a setup issue from Ange rather than the players. And that's why I do think clean sheets are going to be rare over these next 6 game weeks. So for me, Pedro Porro is an absolute avoid going into Game Week 2. We accept what will be, but of course, we don't even know if he is available. So let me know if you've already bought him in the comment section, but I think you shouldn't touch him. So moving into the first player that I think managers definitely should be looking to buy going into Game Week 2 is going to be Diogo Jota. And I need to caveat this whole video by saying, I don't think you should necessarily buy these players desperately, but if you are in the market for a player, maybe around this price point, then definitely this is the sort of player that you should be looking for. So Diogo Jota in that game, 0.81 expected goals and 3 shots. Really solid underlying numbers. And the crazy thing about it is he didn't even put up the highest XG by a Liverpool player. That was by Luis Diaz, around 0.92, 0.93. So all of these Liverpool front three were putting in incredible numbers against Ipswich. But I think that probably was what was to expect against a team like Ipswich, who are newly promoted into the league, maybe a little bit naive at times. But the reason why I prefer Diogo Jota over Luis Diaz is simply because he is playing as that forward. Now, Diaz put up fantastic numbers, but we've already seen Slot come out and say that he views Gakpo as a left-sided forward rather than a centre forward. So that already puts competition on someone like a Luis Diaz later on. And of course, we do have a Darwin Núñez to contend with, but right now, what we've seen in pre-season and what we saw in game week 1, I can't see Diogo Jota losing that number 1 spot as the forward right now. Maybe it'll happen in the long term, and of course you are taking that risk if you go for anybody outside of Mo Salah, but for the next foreseeable games, game week 2 to game week 5 in particular, I think we're going to get solid game time from Diogo Jota over that period. And as we mentioned, the fixtures long term are fantastic. Now, of course, there are a few problems. Risky of potentially coming off early. 79th minute substitution in game week 1 suggests that. So you might not be getting a full 90-minute player. But also, as I mentioned, don't think you are getting anybody like that outside of Mo Salah week in, week out. And if he continues to put these numbers up, the big thing about Jota that I do love is, when he gets a chance, he usually does finish it. Whereas people like Salah, people like Luis Diaz sometimes need loads of shot volumes just to actually put one away. Jota doesn't need that. He's much more clinical of a finisher than the other two, maybe controversially. The other thing that I need to mention is, it's not a terrible thing, but I feel like this year with Liverpool, the goals are going to be spread out across the team. We might actually see this Liverpool team revert back to that front three of Firmino, Mane and Salah, where all three players were in and amongst the goals, or at least based on the underlying numbers. And that's not a bad thing. The question that we need to ask ourselves is, do we actually need to double up on these front three? If you sat there with Salah, maybe you need to go for Salah and Jota. And if you're a Jota owner, maybe we need to put Luis Diaz in the mix as well to double up on that attack. Because between the three of them, they put an XG of 2. Massive numbers. So something to consider, but also slightly a problem because we might not be able to predict who is going to be scoring each and every game week. But based on what I saw, based on the big chances that he had, I still think Diogo Jota is the one to go for at 7.5 million. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, but I think buying Jota is not a bad move at all. So I know the title of the video is buy or avoid, but I had to break the rules here and put a keep option because I'm seeing Ollie Watkins being sold by the masses going into game week 2. And I need to sit here and tell you what I think you should not be selling him in your teams. And if you own him right now, you just got to keep him. So quick reminder, Ollie Watkins, 9 million, the second most expensive forward. So naturally, if a player like this who you're paying big bucks for doesn't deliver, naturally managers get fed up a lot quicker than that of a 6 million forward where they think to themselves, it's 6 million. I kind of expected this. If you're paying 9 million for Watkins, you're kind of expected a goal each and every game week. And I need to put out there and say that you knew already that Watkins didn't have a pre-season. We know he played 0 minutes for Aston Villa, and basically his pre-season is going to be the opening few game weeks of the league. So a few pros about Ollie Watkins first and foremost. So after game week 2, the fixtures are amazing. And this is where I cannot wrap my head around why managers are selling Ollie Watkins. Arsenal at home in game week 2, let's be real, is not ideal. But beyond this, game week 3 away against Leicester, we saw him against Spurs, really struggling to contain that Spurs attack. I think Villa will have similar joy. Everton at home in game week 4, fantastic. Game week 5 against Wolves, game week 6 against Ipswich. Even game week 7 at home against Man United, I don't look at that and think Ollie Watkins cannot deliver in that fixture. So apart from game week 2, and let's be real, we've seen Aston Villa do a job on Arsenal in the past. The other thing that we need to talk about in terms of Ollie Watkins is managers are going to be buying him regardless. So if you're in a position right now where you do own him, you had him since game week 1, you're selling him, but just know that come game week 3, managers in their masses are going to be buying Ollie Watkins because they're going to forget about this fixture. They're going to see the rest and think, of course I want Ollie Watkins. He's one of the talismanic figures in the league. And we know that if Aston Villa do well over this period, he is going to do well. So that is why I think managers need to hesitate on selling him right now. I get it. Game week 2 is not ideal. But beyond that, I think you're going to want to go straight back to him unless you're maybe looking at doing a game week 3 wildcard where you can get him back into your teams. Now, of course, there are reasons why managers are selling him. 0 XG, 0 shots, early substitution. All these things do add up to a frustrating asset. I get it. But it's only one game week. He is a bit of a minutes risk, maybe in game week 2 as well with John Duran. Like, there's no chance Ollie Watkins gets dropped for John Duran. It's worth noting this is an absolute talisman in this Aston Villa team. But maybe against Arsenal, we maybe see the same thing of 60 minutes, building that fitness back up in preparation for game week 3, and John Duran gets half an hour. That definitely could happen once again. But all in all, I personally think if you went early on Ollie Watkins, I think you just keep him. I think game week 2 is tricky at home against Arsenal, and yes, he is lacking a bit of match fitness, but each and every fixture that passes, he is getting built up back to 100%, and that will probably coincide with game week 3 when you've just sold him and you're going to want him straight back into your FPL team. So save a transfer, keep Ollie Watkins, accept game week 2, and then know that you've got one of the best players going forward. So moving away from one forward, Ollie Watkins, who's being sold by thousands of FPL managers, to one of the most bought forwards coming into the game is going to be Kai Havertz. And you can see here, I actually don't have Kai Havertz as a player that you should be buying. I have him as one that you should be avoiding right now. And Ollie Watkins to Havertz is probably one of the most popular forward transfers right now in the game. And of course, at 8 million, he is slightly cheaper than Watkins, so I get it. Frees up a bit of funds elsewhere to invest in teams. But Kai Havertz is a problem later down the line. So the good things. Game week 1 is naturally drawing attention for managers. A 12-point haul, 0.66 expected goals, 5 shots, really, really solid underlying numbers. And you know that you're getting guaranteed game time for a forward playing in a top 2 team. And even if he isn't playing in a forward, we expect his game time to be solid wherever he plays in this team. So that is a real bonus for the foreseeable future. We don't have any risks regarding Kai Havertz. The problems though. Whereas Ollie Watkins' fixtures are tough, followed by great, Arsenal's fixtures in the next few are just tricky long term. 3 of the next 4 matches are away from home against top teams. Aston Villa in game week 2. Yes, game week 3 is good against Brighton, but then game week 4 against Spurs, game week 5 against Man City. Then you get your luxury of 6 and 7 at home against Leicester and Southampton. You definitely don't want to be without Arsenal attackers in game week 6. But if you said to me right now, Villa, Spurs, City away, 3 of the next 4, do I want to be buying a forward in preparation for those fixtures? My answer is no. And it's only because Kai Havertz had a good game week 1 where I think managers are thinking to themselves, I want a piece of that attack. But I'm sitting here telling you that I don't think you desperately need to be buying Kai Havertz into your team. I actually would go as far as saying, if I wanted to forward between game weeks 2 and game weeks 5, I'd prefer Ollie Watkins over Kai Havertz at 1 million more. And for that reason, I think Havertz is an avoid. I get it. The numbers are good. He probably will tick over okay because Arsenal are a dominant team. They really do suffocate sides. But do I expect him to go crazy in all of these fixtures? I think the answer is no. And for that reason, if you have Havertz, you probably do keep him and hope for the best, especially for game week 3. But if you're looking to buy him, this is a complete avoid for your FPL teams right now. Maybe we look to reassess in game week 6 when we can really pile in on those Arsenal attackers for those incredible home games. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Maybe slightly controversial, maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but for me, Kai Havertz is an avoid for game week 2. So it's not all doom and gloom. I'm not sitting here telling you to avoid every single player. There are a few others that you should be buying. And the second one is going to be Fulham's Robinson at 4.5 million. So we all kind of wondered how Fulham will react after selling one of their best players in Paulinho to Bayern Munich. And it's worth noting, Fulham didn't put up the best numbers against Man United, around a 2 expected goals conceded against them. I know Man United have a bit more firepower this season. They're a bit more cohesive than what we saw last year, but not the best numbers. But I still think Fulham are a decent investment, especially if you're in a position right now where maybe you own Liverpool's Quansah. And I haven't put a slide here on Quansah in general. I wanted to just mention him in conversation while we speak about Robinson. I do think Quansah is a keep right now. I think obviously Slot was very savage with Quansah and took him out of his team, but I think Quansah is still a keep. Reassess after game week 2, see whether it was just a tactical tweak for that particular game or whether Slot has actually lost confidence in Quansah. So I wouldn't be selling Quansah right now because 4.5 is still good value. However, if we do see a situation where he's benched once again against Brentford, then I do think we cut our losses and we sell Quansah. But if you're in a position right now where you've had enough, you've seen enough, he is leaving your team, I really do advocate taking a look at Robinson in your team. So prior to the goal being conceded, even though we put up nothing in terms of attacking numbers. He was pretty much top for bonus prior to the goal, meaning he's doing all the good stuff in terms of the bonus baseline, which is exactly what we want from certain players. Even though he didn't get bonus points, I want to look at it and think, how was he doing before the goal was conceded? And he was doing fantastic. The other thing, the fixtures are great. Leicester at home, Ipswich away, West Ham at home. Then 5 and 6 are a little bit difficult. But for the next few game weeks, especially for those managers that are maybe looking at a wild card around game week 6, which I know is very popular, I do think in the meantime, Robinson offers fantastic value. I know his underlying numbers weren't great against Man United, but it was away against Man United. I think we will see an uptake in those attacking returns once we do see a bit more ball dominance from Fulham in these particular games, which I expect they will do so, especially against people like West Ham, for example, who don't necessarily do that. So I think Robinson is a really good short-term pick based on the fixtures. As I mentioned, the problems. Can we trust the Fulham defence? Based on game week 1, probably not. But again, Man United, I thought were okay in that fixture. So I don't think we can completely decide on the Fulham team right now. And also, are the attacking numbers a little bit overhyped? I think we all saw pre-season with Robinson bombing down the wing, overlapping his winger, getting into good opportunities. But last season, the numbers weren't incredible. He started 37 games, only put up about 3 expected assists. So the numbers weren't amazing. And I'm not sitting here saying that Robinson is going to be the next Trent or Andy Robertson. But I do think he has the potential in this Fulham team to offer both attacking returns and clean sheet potential. And for that reason, for the short term, I think he's a brilliant investment if you want to sell Quansah, knowing that you could wildcard around game week 6 or maybe the fixtures get a little bit more difficult. So let me know your thoughts on Robinson. Definitely a player that you should have on your radar as a defensive buy. So I wanted to wrap up this video with a little bit of discussion on Man City because they are quite a hot topic coming into game week 2, of course, with their game against Ipswich. Now, I can't talk about Haaland. Of course, he's a buy if you can afford him for this fixture, so I'm not going to touch on him. Also, De Bruyne, 9.5 million. I don't really think it is worth a buy right now. I didn't see enough in that game to think, oh my God, I need De Bruyne. And equally with Phil Foden, coming back up to fitness, didn't look the sharpest when he came on at half-time at 9.5. I think we need to see maybe a little bit more before investing in him as a fantasy option because, of course, he had no preseason, similar to what we saw with Ollie Watkins. So I think we can expect a slower start from those players in particular. But Doku, Silva and Rico Lewis are the ones that are catching the manager's attention right now. Doku starting off the left-hand side, of course, with the injuries to the wingers. Jack Grealish was on the bench, so there is going to be competition for Doku. So I don't think we can sit here and say to ourselves, Doku is going to start each and every game week. Bernardo Silva, on the other hand, operating on the right-hand side, but also much more playing centrally against Chelsea. I think his minutes will be better than that of Doku's over the next 6 game weeks. So if you want a safe 6.5 million option, I do prefer Bernardo Silva over Jeremy Doku, but I do think Doku, especially in game week 2 at home against Ipswich, has that higher ceiling where if a player was to get a 20-pointer, it would be Jeremy Doku over a Bernardo Silva. So if you're looking for a 1 game week punt, I think the answer is Doku. If you're looking for consistency, I think then Bernardo Silva is the one. But again, the numbers for all of these players don't really excite me. And of course, we're looking at 1 game week here. Bernardo Silva, 2 shots, 0.15 XG, 0.65 expected assists. So decent numbers. Doku, on the other hand, quite disappointing, and we know his end product is very, very erratic. So this is a very raw player that even if he does get chances, he doesn't necessarily do the best with them. I don't really trust him when he gets into those opportunities. So for me, I think Doku is just a great 1 week punt, but I wouldn't be looking to bring him into my FPL teams longer term. And also, could we maybe see Pep go to his favoured choice where he plays Foden off the left, has him come in field, and Vardiel operates as a bombing left winger? That could be the case, and then that really does suggest that Doku could be a rotation risk. So for me, Bernardo Silva is the preference, but neither really excite me going forward in the next few game weeks. But I get it if you want a piece of that game against Ipswich. Rico Lewis also getting talked about a lot, and end of the day, what we saw Kyle Walker at the Euros, what we're seeing from Rico Lewis, it should be a no-brainer. Lewis is the right back for Man City, and I hope to see that, but I think there's enough uncertainty right now. Does he start against Ipswich? I think there's a great opportunity that he does do that. Comes into the pockets really well, much better player than Kyle Walker, but maybe Pep will see this Ipswich game as an opportunity for Kyle Walker to build up his minutes, as it is a fixture they would expect to win quite comfortably. So I think this all adds up to this. I think Rico Lewis is just an avoid. I think he's a great value pick at 4.5, but each and every game week you're going to be holding your breath, praying that he does play. And let's be real, he isn't offering any attacking numbers, and it's worth noting as well, last season didn't really put up the best attacking numbers either. So you're getting a player that might get you 6 points, but also you're going to be praying if he plays each and every game week. Doku and Silva, good for 1 week punts. Don't really love them longer term. I think they're a higher upside 6.5 million picks. For me, I'd rather just wait until we see Phil Foden return to the team and then maybe look at a chance of downgrading Haaland to Phil Foden to change up the structure of our teams. Yes, guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's video looking at the players to buy or avoid going into game week 2. I really hope it provided some value. And the players that I missed off, let me know who should have been in this video in the comments section. It'd be great to see some opinions out there. If you have any questions coming into game week 2, get them in the comments section. I'll be sure to answer them. And once again, if you did enjoy the video, please do consider dropping a like in for 300. And of course, smash the subscribe button. So close to 17k, I can taste it. Thank you so much once again. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you real soon. Take care. Cheers.